Title of story: The Whisper of the White Steed. A Covenant of Stone Creek. Prologue. The man and the steed, nestled in the crook of the mist-shrouded Blue Ridge Mountains, lay the village of Stone Creek. It was a place of simple log cabins and winding dirt paths, where the air smelled of pine, resin, and wood smoke, and the rhythm of life was set by the sun and the seasons. And on the outskirts of this village, in a modest cabin that seemed to lean against the great weeping willow for support, lived an old man named Elias. Elias was a man carved from the very granite of the mountains. His face was a road map of deep-set lines, each one a story of summers baked into his skin and winters weathered with quiet resolve. He was not a rich man by any measure of coin or acre. He owned no sprawling fields, no chest of gold buried beneath his hearth. His wealth was of a different kind, a more profound currency. His treasure was a magnificent white stallion named Alabaster. The horse was a creature of legend, a spectral vision of pure muscle and grace. His coat was the color of fresh fallen snow, his mane and tail like flowing silver thread. When he ran across the high meadow behind Elias's cabin, he moved with a thunderous, silent poetry that stole the breath from all who saw him. The villagers of Stone Creek would often pause in their labors, their axes halting mid-swing, their washing forgotten, just to watch the stallion dance with the wind. He was their unofficial marvel, a piece of wild, beautiful magic tethered to their humble world. And the offers came, as they always did. Just last week, a land baron from the flatlands, a man named Thaddeus Blackwood, with fingers heavy with gold rings, had stood right there in Elias's dooryard. His entourage of grim-faced men had shifted uncomfortably, their fine boots sinking into the mud. "Name your price, old-timer," Blackwood had said, his voice a low, oily, slick. "That beast belongs on an estate, pulling a fine carriage, not wasting away in this picturesque poverty." Elias had simply rested a calloused hand on Alabaster's powerful neck, feeling the warm, vital life thrumming beneath the silken coat. The horse nudged his shoulder, a gesture of deep, familiar trust. "Alabaster is not for sale, sir." Elias's voice was calm, a steady river flowing over smooth stones. "He is not a beast of burden. He is my confidant, my family, the last piece of my heart that still runs wild." Blackwood had scoffed, tipping his hat back. "Sentimentality is a poor man's feast. It fills no bellies. Money can buy a fine bed." "Mr. Blackwood," Elias had replied, his pale blue eyes holding the man's gaze without flinching, "but it cannot buy you peaceful sleep." The villagers, though they admired the horse, thought Elias was a kindly fool. Among them was a young, ambitious farmer named Caleb. sweet on Elias's granddaughter, Lily. Caleb would voice the collective thought. Elias, you could secure a future for yourself and for Lily. That horse is a king's ransom. Why let pride keep you in want? Lily, a young woman of 17, with eyes the color of forest moss and a spirit as fierce as the mountain wind, would always defend her grandfather. His heart isn't for trading, Caleb, she'd say, her voice firm. Some things are beyond price. Elias would just offer his gentle, enigmatic smile that suggested he was privy to a secret joke the universe had yet to reveal. The mountain does not reveal its peaks all at once. Son, we must wait for the clouds to part. Chapter 1. The void, the morning it happened, dawned unnervingly still. A thick white fog had rolled down from the peaks, swallowing the valley whole, muting the world to a ghostly hush. Lily was the first to notice. She came out to draw water from the well, her shawl pulled tight against the damp chill. The high meadow was empty. The fence post where Alabaster was usually tethered stood alone, a solitary sentinel in the mist. The gate was swung wide open, not broken, but unlatched. A cold dread, colder than the morning air, seized her heart. Grandfather, she cried, her voice swallowed by the fog dot. Elias emerged from the cabin, his movements slow and deliberate. He looked at the empty meadow, then at the open gate. His face, usually so placid, seemed to harden for a fraction, a second, a crack in the granite. He walked to the fence and placed his hand on the top rail, his knuckles white. The news tore through Stone Creek like a lightning strike. By mid-morning, a crowd had gathered around Elias's property, a murmur of concern, anxious faces materializing from the fog. Caleb pushed to the front. Elias, it's a catastrophe. Blackwood's men were just here. They must have seen an opportunity in the fog, or perhaps it was mountain poachers. I told you, you should have sold him. Mrs. Gable, the village seamstress and its most prolific gossip, wrung her hands. Oh, the bad luck. The sheer, devastating bad luck. That horse was your providence, Elias. Now it's gone, and you have nothing to show for it. The air was thick with their lamentations, a chorus of certainty in his ruin. Lily stood beside her grandfather, her hand finding his arm. She could feel the tension coiled in his old frame. She expected to see despair in his eyes, but instead, she saw a deep, unsettling concentration. He finally turned to the crowd, his voice not much louder than a whisper, yet it cut through the nervous chatter. Maybe it is bad luck. Maybe it is not. Who can truly know the entire path until they have reached its end? The villagers fell silent, exchanging bewildered glances. They saw not wisdom, but the stubborn denial of a heartbroken old man trying to mask a pain too great to bear. They dispersed, shaking their heads, leaving Elias and Lily alone in the silent, fog-shrouded clearing. The absence of Alabaster was a physical weight, a void where thunderous life used to be. Chapter 2. The return. 3 days passed. 3 long, aching days. The fog lifted, but a gloom had settled over the cabin. Lily moved through her chores with a heavy heart, while Elias spent hours sitting on his porch, his eyes scanning the tree line, not with hope, but with a patient, watchful intensity. On the morning of the 4th day, the sound began as a faint, distant rumble, like summer thunder rolling through the valleys, but the sky was a clear, brilliant blue. Elias stood up, his chair scraping against the wooden planks. Lily ran to his side, her heart hammering against her ribs. The rumble grew louder, resolving into the unmistakable drumbeat of galloping hooves. And then he emerged from the dark pine forest. Alabaster, he surged into the meadow, his white coat gleaming like a pearl under the sun, more magnificent and powerful than ever. But he was not alone. In his wake came 3 other horses, their coats slick with sweat, their eyes wide with a thrilling mix of fear and wildness. One was a dappled gray, strong and broad-chested. Another, a sleek, fiery chestnut. The third, a deep, midnight black, smaller but lightning dash, quick dot. It was a stampede of pure, untamed glory. The village descended once more, but this time their cries were of stunned disbelief. Caleb's mouth hung open. Mrs. Gable was practically speechless for the first time in her life. A miracle. A farmer shouted, "1 becomes 4. Elias, you're the luckiest man in the territory. It's a sign of divine favor." Lily laughed, tears of joy streaming down her face, her earlier despair forgotten in the incredible triumph. Elias, however, did not celebrate. He walked slowly into the meadow. Alabaster trotted to him, lowering his great head to nuzzle the old man's chest. Elias closed his eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of horse and earth. He looked at the 3 wild creatures, their flanks heaving, circling skittishly. They were beautiful, but they were chaos incarnate. He turned to the jubilant crowd, his voice grave. "Do not be so quick to name this fortune. A sudden storm may bring water to the crops, or it may wash them away. We have been given a gift, yes, but the nature of that gift is not yet known. We must wait." His words were a bucket of cold water. The celebration died. The confusion returned, now tinged with frustration. Why couldn't the old man just be happy? Chapter 3. The fall. The new horses brought a wave of excitement and of the villagers. None was more excited than Lily's brother, Finn. At 19, Finn was all youthful bravado and fearless energy, with his sister's green eyes and a laugh that could echo through the mountains. He saw the horses not as a philosophical puzzle, but as a challenge. "I'll break them, grandfather," he declared, his chest puffed with pride. "I'll make them useful. We'll have the finest team in the county." Elias placed a restraining hand on his grandson's arm. "The wildness in their eyes is not malice, Finn, but fear. You must move like the sunlight, son, slow and warm. You cannot conquer a mountain. You must learn its rhythms." But Finn, buoyed by the admiration of the village, and especially of Caleb, who egged him on, was impatient. He focused on the fiery chestnut, the most defiant of the trio. The day of the accident was bright and clear. A crowd had gathered to watch Finn's latest attempt. He'd managed to get a bridle on the chestnut and was leading him around the corral. The horse was tense, its ears flat against its skull. "See," Finn called out, grinning. "He's learning." In a flash of motion, too fast to follow, a hawk screeched from a nearby tree. The chestnut spooked, rearing up with a terrified whinny. Finn, caught off guard, held on too tight. The horse came down, bucking, its hooves a violent blur. Finn was thrown like a rag doll against a rough-hewn fence post. The sound was sickening, a sharp, dry crack that silenced the birds. Lily screamed. Finn lay in the dirt, clutching his leg, his face a mask of shock and agony. His right leg was bent at a horrifying, unnatural angle. The villagers rushed forward, their cries now of horror. Caleb was the first to reach him, his face pale. Mrs. Gable wailed, "A curse. It's a curse. First, the horse is stolen. Then, it returns with demons. Now it's broken, your boy." Elias knelt in the dirt beside his grandson, his hands gentle as he assessed the injury. His face was ashen, but his hands were steady. He looked up, his eyes finding the terrified faces of his neighbors. "Help me carry him inside," was all he said, his voice a low rumble of strained calm. Later, as the village doctor set the leg a long, painful process, the crowd lingered outside. Their narrative had solidified. Elise's foolishness had led directly to this tragedy. His strange philosophy had finally borne its bitter fruit as they dispersed. Whispering of curses and bad omens, Elias stood on his porch, watching the sunset paint the peaks in blood orange. Lily stood beside him, her body trembling with spent adrenaline and fear. "Sometimes, my child," Elias said, his voice barely audible, "the path to a clearing is through the thickest, darkest thorns. We are in the thorns now. We must not panic. We must simply keep walking, Lily wanted to believe him. But looking at her brother's pain-racked face through the window, all she could feel was the thorns. Chapter 4. The king's decree weeks bled into a month. Finn was confined to his bed, a feverish, frustrated prisoner of his injury. The vibrant young man was replaced by a bitter, helpless invalid. The 3 wild horses, the cause of it all, stood in the meadow, untouched and haunting. The mood in all of Stone Creek was grim. The story of Elias's cursed luck was a cautionary tale told over supper tables. Then, the king's men arrived. They came not on official business, but as heralds of doom. A royal messenger, his uniform dusty and his face grim, stood in the village square and unrolled a scroll. The mayor rang the bell, calling everyone to hear war, a conflict with the northern kingdom. Long simmering had finally boiled over. The king was conscripting every able-bodied young man from 16 to 25. The messenger's words were cold, final. The king's soldiers would be through by week's end to collect them. A silent, cold terror fell over Stone Creek. This wasn't about luck or philosophy. It was about life and death. Mothers clung to their sons. Fathers stared at the ground, helpless. 5 days later, the soldiers came. They were grim, efficient men on lathered horses, led by a stern-faced captain with a clipboard. They went door to door. Caleb was taken, his face a mask of stunned fear. The Miller twins, just 16, were dragged, sobbing, from their mother's arms. Every single healthy young man was marked and marched away. They came to Elise's cabin. The captain looked at Finn, pale and sweating in his bed, his leg heavily splinted. "Can he walk?" The captain barked. "No, sir," Elias said, standing tall in his doorway. "The bone is still knitting. He cannot stand, let alone march." The captain made a note on his clipboard. "Useless," he muttered, and turned on his heel. The soldiers left. The silence they left behind was heavier than any noise. The village was stripped of its youth, its future. The only young man left in all of Stone Creek was Finn, saved by his broken leg. That evening, the villagers came to Elias's cabin once more. But they did not come with accusations or advice. They came hollow-eyed, their anger and judgment replaced by a devastating, dawning understanding. Mrs. Gable stood there, her son taken away. She looked at Elias, her eyes brimming with a pain beyond tears. "Your boy," she whispered, her voice, "your boy is safe. You were right, Elias, all along." That fall, it was a mercy. It saved him. Elias looked out at the shattered community, his heart aching for their pain. He put a comforting arm around Lily, who was crying softly for Caleb. "For all of them, life, my friends, is a river," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It rages and it calms. It takes and it gives. We stand on its banks and we see only the small part in front of us. We call a whirlpool bad and a calm eddy good. But the river itself has a destination we cannot see. Our joy and our pain are both part of its current, carving us into who we are meant to be. We must learn to trust the flow. Epilogue. The Covenant. Story of Elias and the White Steed became the soul of Stone Creek. It was no longer a simple parable, but a lived truth, etched into the heart of every man, woman, and child who had lost a son and witnessed a miracle of tragedy. Elias did not say everything happens for a reason, for that implied a simplicity the world does not possess. Instead, he spoke of a covenanta, silent, enduring promise that strength is forged in uncertainty, that protection often wears the frightening mask of disaster, and that the only true failure is to judge the story before it is finished. Alabaster lived out his days in the high meadow, an eternal symbol of the wild, unknowable journey. And Finn, who walked with a slight limp for the rest of his life, never again saw it as a mark of shame, but as a sacred reminder. A reminder that sometimes the most profound blessings are delivered on the hoofprints of what we first perceive as catastrophe, and that the only way to navigate the storm is with a heart not of stone, but of unwavering, patient trust.